I just always remember my mom used to like do tests on us, like for
What kind of
school
tests?
and stuff. I just remember like they weren't Rorschach tests exactly, but they were similar to that, just like kid versions where she would like, I don't really remember specifically, but you know, it was all like my room pretty much had the bookshelf where all of her books for college were, so
Yeah.
it's pretty much like I've just always been aware of it. My dad is bipolar.
Okay.
Do you know anything about bipolar?
I know a little bit, but not that much.
So bipolar 1, there's a few different types of bipolar. Bipolar 1, from what I understand, and obviously I'm not a professional, so I don't have any degree in this at all, so this is really just like my experience with
Okay.
it and what I understand.
Does your mother and father have it, or just your father?
Just my dad. My mom has my mom probably has ADD or something like that.
Okay.
But my dad is bipolar, and he has bipolar 1, which means when he's not medicated, he can get like Kanye, where like
Okay.
losing a little bit of touch with reality. You're not thinking straight. My dad never really suffered the depressive parts of it. That's what he says anyway. But there is like, those are kind of like the highs and lows. They used to call it manic depression because it was, people understood it as being mostly depression.
Yeah.
But I guess like, you know, as people did more studies on it, then it's like, okay, losing touch with reality, they are not making sense at all. I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 last year.
Okay.
Bipolar 2, I don't lose touch with reality, but I can get what they call hypomanic,
Okay.
which means when I'm not medicated, I can get to stages, to like a point where I'm like euphoric and everything's happy and I'm like, go, go, go. I'm going to do, you know, I'm going to stay up for 24 hours and make a bunch of crafts, or I'm going to build my kid the most epic Halloween costume. For me, it usually manifests in creativity like that.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
I was gonna say, so it sounds like it could be a,
well,
you know, not
that's
so bad thing.
where it gets tricky though, because there are people who believe that they don't need to be medicated, because if they are medicated, then it's going to take that superpower away,
Oh,
that
okay.
creativity thing.
Okay.
But the thing that follows is I start to think that I don't need sleep,
Right.
and when I
But do
don't
you get
sleep,
tired?
I will, but I would like push through it, and I'm able to do that. It doesn't affect me in the way that it would affect like some people where they're like, I have to go to sleep now. If it's like I had a prior commitment to like
Yeah.
a friend or something like that, it would be like, well, even though I was up all night, I'm still gonna go meet with that friend. I'm still gonna do this, instead of being like, I feel like a lot of people would probably, especially when we get to like this age, it's like, nah, man, I gotta go to bed.
Oh yeah, I'll cancel plans quick on you.
Yeah,
Nah,
you're
I'm
like,
not doing
no,
that.
I've had such a rough week, but for me, I'd be like, no, I have to do this, I have to do that. I have like, it would just manifest in like so much energy that I don't really know what to do with.
If you don't do it, then what will happen?
I would just get upset, and like kind of my anxiety would start to ramp up. Like I would feel like I let people down. I'm also a codependent, and I don't know if you know much about codependency.
Nope. But wait, before we go into
Yes.
that, so losing touch with reality.
Yeah.
What exactly is that, like seeing hallucinations or?
So, kind of. I mean, I maybe for some people, for my dad. So, the other day at work, you asked me, like, why was I such an anxious kid?
Yes.
Right? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. I always had parents who fought. I always had parents who, you know, were angry at each other. There was a lot of anger in my household, which I'm sure quite a few people have dealt with that
Can
in their
relate with
lives.
that,
Yeah.
right?
But when my mom was pregnant with me, I didn't find this out until way later. When my mom was pregnant with me, that was the first time she had to hospitalize my dad,
Okay.
because I don't know specifics about that particular episode. They call them manic episodes. I don't know the specifics of that manic episode, but I know that my mom was very stressed, and she's always said that like I was stressed. I was so stressed with you, you know, when I was pregnant with you. So like that anxiety was just always a part of you. It was like since in the womb, like I've been like wired for anxiety.
Right.
When I was 13 years old, my dad had his second or third, I don't even know, but he had a really big manic episode where for like the entire week prior to like the big thing, he was not sleeping. My mom was away on a conference, and he wouldn't let her talk to us. She would call, and he would pretend like nobody was home. He was just acting very strange.
Okay.
There was like a lot of weird behavior. Me and my siblings didn't know what was going on. My mom was actually pregnant with my younger sister, so I was 13. My older sister was like almost 15, and then my little brother was 5.
Okay.
And he was staying up all night doing, whatever he was doing. I know he was like doing a lot of stuff in the garage, whether it was like reorganizing, I don't know, but he had a lot of this energy that he had to get out. And when my mom, she ended up coming back early from the conference because she just had a feeling that something was off.
Right.
She ended up coming home, and he thought that she was like a demon or a witch, and he wouldn't let her around us.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day, they stayed up all night talking, and the next day he was like, I'm gonna take the kids, we're gonna go see a movie. We never saw a movie, we never did anything, but he took us for my mom and like didn't bring us back for like 3 days. And he told us that she was a witch, she was evil, she was trying to kill us. Like, he was super paranoid about things that did not make sense at all. So that all happened. We ended up staying.
Man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Did your mother know, I guess, before she had kids, before the both of them had, you and your brothers and sisters and everything, did she know that he had?
No.
Okay.
I don't think... this episode was when he was finally diagnosed as bipolar 1, and I'm sure there were a lot of factors into that, whether it was like science or whatever. Like, they may not have known all that much about bipolar or whatever, but she knew that he had drug issues, substance issues, but she didn't know... I don't think anybody really knew that he was like mentally ill, especially.
And it ran in his family, or was he kind of like the first? Okay.
Well, I guess there are like, now that we know these things, I'm sure like my grandparents think about like, okay, well maybe my dad, maybe like whatever, but my grandfather didn't know his dad, so there's like a whole lineage that we don't even know anything about. So
did your father go easily when your mother was, suggested taking him in? Okay.
No.
Do you remember it?
Yes. So my mom kept trying to get us back. We went to pastors' houses, and we went to the types of churches that pastors weren't necessarily like aware of mental illness. I think they just believed that it was the devil.
Gotcha.
Like it was just he has the devil in him, whatever. But when he was saying things about my mom being a witch, like, they believed it. So they kept us from my mom.
Wow.
Yeah.
What, this is like in Mississippi? What was this?
No, this was in the high desert, which is basically fucking Mississippi.
Okay.
But
man, okay.
It's like a very small town, so a lot of people have like a very, limited scope of these types of things. So they kept us from my mom too. Like, she would try to call, they'd be like, they can't talk to you right now. It was really weird, but as a kid, like, I believed it. My older sister, I think, just even being 18 months older than me, like, even though that doesn't seem like a lot, I think she knew and understood more than I did, because I believed it, and so did my little brother. We were like, we don't want to be around my mom, she's scary.
How old were you at this time?
I was 13.
Okay.
So I really didn't trust my mom. I felt like my dad knew what he was doing. And then the last day that we were away, I don't really remember specific details, but my mom tried to get us back. So the pastor let her take me and my older sister, sorry. She's short, so I often refer to her as my little sister.
Okay.
But and then my dad had my brother, but we didn't know where they were. This is like pre-cell phones and all of that. And we went back to our house, and my dad had been there, and he had like trashed the whole place. He had like cut out photos, like she had like, we had family photos, and he had like cut her out in all the photos. Like, it was just very obvious that he was like not in his right mind. And he came back while we were there, and he was like, they started arguing and fighting, and he hit her in front of us, and that was how he stopped her. And then after that, we like went to my uncle's house. My uncle was a pastor, and so he...
On your mother's side or your father's side?
My dad's side. It was actually my great uncle, and he's technically also my godfather because I was baptized Catholic. But he was a formally trained pastor and was aware that something wasn't adding up. So he called my grandmother. She and my aunt came and picked us up and like explained to us like, none of that is true. Everything that you guys just experienced is like not cool, and it's very traumatic. Like, the cops were after him and stuff like that because he hurt my mom a lot. I guess if he had like hit her a little bit harder or like a little bit closer to a certain point in her neck, it would have like probably damaged her carotid artery, or like she could have died. Like, and so that trauma stayed with me for a very, very, very long time. My dad was arrested. He did go to jail for a couple months.
Because of that?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't really know specifics about the charges. In fact, me and my younger brother want to we're both in a place now where we can like talk about it openly, and it's not something that holds us back or traumatizes us. Like, I'm not sitting here crying to you like as I talk, because it's just something that happened to us and something that we had to deal with. But I've always been prone to anxiety, and then when you add trauma, like severe trauma on top of that, it's just a recipe for a hot mess, basically. So
what prompted you to go and I guess go to the doctor and get like a look over?
I've been in therapy since I was 13. So after that incident, we did go to therapy. I think I only went to like 1 or 2 sessions though, because I was just not comfortable, and it was a man. The therapist was a man, and I was very uncomfortable with men at that time. And it didn't really work out for me. But after that, I struggled in school. My parents got back together like 3 months after all that happened. So it was like he moved back in with us. There was really no time to really like process it, because it was like, well, we're just going right back into the family dynamic that we've always had. So
why did your mother, I guess, take him back? Or were there like stipulations like you have to do this?
No, I think she was pregnant with my little sister at the time, and I think it was just, that's the man that she chose to marry. And my mom, she's not Catholic anymore, but she is very religious. She believes in God. She believes that the vow that she made, like, she was very also codependent, but she also, I think, just felt a lot of shame and was not comfortable. She wasn't ready at that time to leave him. So all throughout high school, I struggled with anxiety. I was a terrible student.
Like grades wise, or
yes. No, yeah, and I would ditch all the time too. Like, I barely graduated high school, like for real. But I never really went back to therapy until maybe my junior year in high school. I developed an eating disorder. I had severe anxiety. I was afraid of everything.
Anorexia or bulimic?
A little bit of both.
Both, okay.
Yeah. And I was prone to anxiety attacks. So I would have moments where if my dad was yelling at me, something would trigger and I would be screaming. I would like run to my room screaming and like holding the door shut with my back and not letting anybody in, and just like screaming and crying. Like really severe panic attacks and like really severe anxiety. I had such a hard time sleeping. My physical health was pretty poor too. Like I would get sick a lot. So like that's another reason why I like was never at school, because I was always sick with something.
Yeah.
So I went back to therapy, and that particular therapist was great, but I don't know. We were very honest. Me and my sister both went separate times, like separate sessions. But I know she and I were both very honest with that therapist about what we were going through at home. And, because the emotional abuse didn't stop there. It's not like my dad did this really terrible thing that he feels to this day feels very guilty for. But things didn't really change after that. So I would deal with things like my dad would be mad at me and he would like freeze me out and like give me the silent treatment and like not talk to me. And that drove me crazy, because it's like, where do I stand? What did I do wrong? I would go through my head, like a Rolodex in my head of like, okay, there was this interaction. Did I say something wrong here? Did I do something wrong there? Like where I wouldn't know what I did to be in trouble. I wouldn't know.
To do like just a sidebar. So when you said you did like the Rolodex in your head, going through everything, right, to see, I guess, where you messed up.
Yeah.
Is that caused by anxiety, or is it more a woman thing?
I think it's a little bit of anxiety and codependency, which is like, codependency is something I'm just now really starting to learn a lot about, but I saw codependency daily in my life, where my mom would tell me, like, my interactions with my dad or with anybody, because it wasn't limited to just him, but my interactions with anybody were always based on how that person would react.
Okay.
So I would never want to do anything that would upset somebody. I was always tiptoeing around, like, because my mom would tell us, fly under the radar. Just fly, and that's kind of classic
in the house,
like, yeah,
or okay.
and just in life in general, but like specifically like at home.
Yeah.
Just don't do anything that'll get you in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do anything that. So it was always based on his reactions to things.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of that, and then right around after I graduated, I just got into a really severe fight with my dad that ended with me having a severe panic attack and just distraught. I ended up just packing up my shit and bouncing, and I left. And I didn't live at home like after that at all.
Did you love your father?
Yeah, and I still do.
Yeah.
But I actually just recently, like last year, so after I got diagnosed, that was when I reconnected with him, because I shut him out for years. For about 8 years, I want to say, I just cut him out of my life, and I didn't want anything to do with him. And I don't regret that time at all, because I think I needed to grow and learn, because at this point, I'm like, it doesn't matter. This is for anybody in my life. It does not matter if anybody in my past has changed. Right. What matters is if I'm changing, because then I will have the tools to better deal with certain things, or to throw up boundaries and just be like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with that today, or I don't have to return anybody's calls. I don't have to return texts if I don't feel like it, or if someone's treating me a certain way. But it really wasn't until, so I left home, did my own thing. I struggled with alcoholism. I struggled with eating disorders. I struggled with being with the wrong people. And I got pregnant at almost 21 years old.
Yeah.
Well, no, I got pregnant at 20, and then I had my son when I was almost 21.
Okay.
But I was very, very young, and right after I got pregnant, my husband at that time, he re-enlisted in the military. So, and he got a full-time job at the base that he was stationed at. So we moved to Ventura, and I had never lived anywhere far from my hometown.
Right.
So I went from going like being a party girl, kind of being crazy for a little bit, and then I'm pregnant, and I'm going to marry this man that I've only technically been with for a year. And we're going to move to Ventura now, and we're going to live 3 hours away from my family, away from anybody that I know, and I'm going to raise this kid on my own, basically, because my husband worked crazy hours and wasn't really home a lot. So I would have, like, I think we talked about my fear of the ocean.
Yes. Yeah.
I developed an insane fear of the ocean when we moved to Ventura, because I had postpartum depression that I wasn't taking care of. There were just a lot of things that different ways where I wasn't taking care of myself.
Okay, wait, let's go to the
I
postpartum depression.
Yeah.
So what is that? I understand, like, women get, like, depressed after having a baby. Is it because you don't have the connection, or what?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I've heard from some women, and, like, they call them the baby blues sometimes. So I kind of feel like that's a little bit dismissive, because it could be ignoring a larger problem, which that's what the case was for me. I had so many people that would be like, it's just the baby blues. You'll get over it. You just need, it's just
Oh, so
time.
you talk to people, and they kind of brush you off a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I've always been the type of person that, like, says what they feel, and, like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I feel like it's usually been dismissed.
Right.
And so I finally went to therapy, and this not until I had my daughter, because that's when I realized, oh, this is not going away. This is part of me. I have the hardest time getting out of bed or even showering most days. I'm not taking care of myself.
But what do you feel like? Do you feel like...
Sometimes it would manifest in just laziness, where I would just not want to do anything, or I wouldn't want to go out. Sometimes I wouldn't be able to sleep because I would have nightmares about the end of the world, or I would have anxiety because I have these 2 small children now who mean the world to me, who are everything to me, and if I do something wrong, or if something happens, how am I going to protect them? Like, that was how my anxiety started manifesting, which is like, what do I do if there's somebody that breaks into my place because my husband's not here? What do I do if, we go to the beach and my baby starts drowning? What do I do? Like, there's just so many things that I would get spun up and, like, literally lose sleep over. I would lose sleep over these things.
What did your husband say?
He was really supportive in, like, me going and getting help, but I think it did take him a really long time to understand, to, like, not brush it off as like, well, you just need to get more sleep. Well, and he was very helpful in ways that he could be. Like, you know, he would watch the babies while I cooked dinner, or he would cook dinner. You know, there were things, but, you know, gender roles are very real, I think, in a lot of relationships. So it was easy for me to be like, well, I'm not working. My job is to be here and raise the kids and, you know, be a housewife, basically. But that's never what I've wanted for myself. That's never been what I've wanted for my life. I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I have tons of respect for women who choose that, but it's never been something that I've wanted. So that was like a big struggle too, was like never feeling like I was good enough.
Were
never
you I'm gonna go back to that. But were you happy when your husband was like, okay, we're gonna, because it sounds like you had security, like, you know, you have like a like money coming in and everything like that. So were you happy when you moved and you kind of settled in a little bit? Did you feel like, okay, I'm gonna be okay, and then you would just, I guess, think your way out of it?
Yeah, I think I would have, like, there were definitely moments of happiness for sure, but I think overall, when I look back at that time, I just remember anxiety. I just remember feeling so anxious, and then that anxiety would manifest in things like getting really upset and hurt if people said something to me that hurt my feelings. I would get, like, it was almost like I would feel more hurt than other people would, because I based my sense of self on how other people saw me.
Okay.
So, like, if somebody criticized, or even suggested, not even criticized, but if somebody suggested that I do something else with the way that I was raising my kids, for instance, this is like the perfect example of my kids, we were bitch, oh fuck, you have to edit that out. My kids were bitches.
I'm keeping that in there, buddy. That's in there.
My kids were beach babies. So, like, they were, like, naked all the time. Like, that was super normal. And I would have my family that, like, lived in, like, Chicago. They would be like, oh, why are your kids naked all the time? Which is, like, they were joking, or it was, like, such an innocent question. But it got me so upset. Like, I was so upset about it, and I'd be like, they don't understand what it's like to have kids. I feel like I felt attacked. Like, you know that?
Got you.
I feel attacked. That's just how I was. I felt all the time. I just always felt like I was on the defense. And, like,
from everybody?
From everybody, yes.
That must suck.
Yeah, and it most definitely sucked for the people around me, too, because it's like...
Would you lash out?
Yeah, I would definitely lash out at people, burn bridges, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't so I was diagnosed with anxiety, I was diagnosed with depression, I tried being on antidepressants, I've basically been medicated through, like, I've tried basically all of the antidepressants out there. I've had anti-anxiety stuff.
None of it worked?
It would work for a while, but the thing with antidepressants, especially the last couple years, they just didn't work for me, or they were making it worse. Like, I was starting to feel more suicidal than any point in my life when I was on antidepressants for a while.
Were your kids the only reason why you didn't, I guess, go through with it for most?
I guess that brings us to our next topic. No, I did.
Okay.
Why am I like this? Okay. Yeah, I was hospitalized last September. I had to be put on a 5150 hold because
what is that?
That is when you are held against your will because you are a danger to yourself or others.
A 5150?
Yes, that's like what it's technically called. I wanted to kill myself. I had a plan. I had a note. And at that point, my depression had gotten so bad that everybody in my life was very concerned about me. To the point where my mom had a sit-down conversation with my husband to be like, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do. Because my mom has had experience with having to hospitalize somebody. So her thing was always call me. Do not call the police. Do not call the ambulance. Call me, and I will take her. Because if I had to be taken by an ambulance or if I had to be taken by police, like, that's just a level of trauma that she didn't want to see me go through. Like, my dad was maced. Like, my dad had a lot of shit happen to him.
When did he go into the I guess, what, institution, or when did he go?
I don't even really know. If my mom was pregnant with me, it must have been like 87, 88, because I was born in 88, so it must have been around somewhere.
When's your birthday?
June 11th.
Oh, okay.
So,
I was born in 88 too.
Yeah. What? Oh yeah,
February.
you're a Pisces.
Yeah.
That's right. But so my mom had already, prepared my husband for like, this is what we're gonna do. So the night that I ended up getting hospitalized, I was having a massive panic attack, and
What brought it on? Do you remember?
It was an argument with my husband.
Okay.
That was usually what was bringing it on, was arguments and feeling like I wasn't good enough, and feeling like I was fucking up everything around me. I was messing up my kids. That was the biggest thing too, is I think when people hear mothers being suicidal, that's like a big thing, is like, how could you do that to your kids? Well, my thought process at that time was that my presence alone was so damaging to my children that they would be better off without me. So
okay.
I know that's like hard, and even now that's hard for me to think about, but it's like, that's the thought process. That's how mothers and people are able to do those things, is because they're not selfish. It really is this feeling of, I am overwhelmed by the amount of damage that I'm causing people, and I see me hurting everybody around me, and the fact that I can't get out of bed, the fact that I can't, do a good job when I'm working or whatever. There's any little thing is just going to add on to this pile of, here are the reasons why I'm not good enough.
Why did you feel like you weren't good enough?
At that time, I was dealing with a lot of turmoil in a lot of my relationships with people, not just my relationship with my husband, relationships with friends, relationships with family. Everything in my life was just really, really bad at that time, where I was just so hurt by people. I was so hurt by the way that my family was treating me. I was so hurt, just everything. I was so hurt. And now I can look back on it and see, like, well, it's because I wasn't taking care of myself, and it's not anybody's fault. Well, yeah, sometimes people are shitty and sometimes people are hurtful. If I had been taking care of myself, and if I had a stronger sense of self just for me, then those things wouldn't have bothered me. Like, it would be like now, where if somebody criticizes me, or if somebody said, like, sure, it's hurtful, but it's not gonna send me to the hospital. Like, but that's because I'm properly medicated and I'm taking care of myself. But at that time, so this was early September, and I just really was not in a good place. And so my husband called my mom, and my mom was actually in town that night. She took me to the hospital. I don't really remember a lot from it, because I was really bonkers. Like, I wasn't really making sense. I hadn't really necessarily lost touch with reality, in the sense that, like, I was hallucinating things, or I was really paranoid. It was more like, everybody hates me.
Do you remember your thought process during that time?
Yeah, and it was very much like, everybody hates me. They're all mad at me. Everybody in the world is mad at me, and I can't do anything to fix it. So I was there for 3 days, and every single day was spent trying to figure out how to get out, pretty much. I didn't want to be there. Nobody really wanted to be there, but the people that I met there, I think that was a big eye-opener. It's not like, I think people have this idea that, like, if you're in a hospital, if you're in a mental hospital, which, institutionalized, whatever, that these people are crazy, and these were just really normal hurt people.
Like, what you see on TV and everything is like, people
and I'm
barking
sure,
like a dog or whatever.
Yeah, no. There wasn't anything like that. Everybody there was just struggling. We were all just struggling. And there were a lot of things I learned in there, because pretty much every part of your day is planned out when you're there. You wake up, they make you wake up at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and you do the first group meeting.
Okay.
They're very big on routine. Yeah, you can opt out. You can be like, no, I'm going to sleep in. But they kind of track that as, okay, this person is not ready. So you have to participate
in order to get
if
out.
you want to get out.
That's
exactly. That's what everyone, when I first got there and it was like, I need to get out of here, everyone was like, you need to wake up. Like, here's how you do it. You have to go to every single meeting. They're watching you. They're watching, like, every step you make. And I remember even one time, one of the nurses, I was getting really upset because it was kind of looking like I would have to be there all weekend, and I didn't want to be there the whole weekend, because during the weekend there wasn't really anything going on, because people are working. They didn't have as many group sessions, so I would just be like alone with my thoughts, and I didn't want that. So it was starting to look like I would have to stay throughout the weekend, and I had like a big panic attack, and I was really mad, and the nurses, some of them that didn't know us, they would treat us like babies. Like, I remember coming out at one point and being like, I don't know what's happening. And what I meant was, when do I get to talk to my psychiatrist? When do I get to talk? Like, when do I do these things? But the nurse was like, you're at Del Amo Hospital, and you're like, and it was like, no, I know what day it, like, I know,
Yeah.
but just, I don't know what's happening today. Like,
Right.
can you please? So there was a lot of that, but there were also nurses who were like, take an Ativan, you need to take this right now, and you need to calm down. You need to settle down, because
So
they
they're
are
talking
gonna,
to you like an adult. Like,
Yes,
yeah, they're like, I know
where-
you're going through something.
and like,
this is
and
what
they're like,
you gotta
if
do.
you want to get out of here, listen to me. Like, if you want to get out of here, take an Ativan, chill out, go to your next group, and we'll figure out, like, just trust us. We'll figure out when you can talk to the psychiatrist. So I was able to get out on a Friday. I was able to go home, but very shortly after that, my husband ended up having an injury that caused me to go right back into what I was doing before.
Okay, wait,
which
let's
was-
stop right there.
Okay.
So let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
So, okay, so when your husband called your mother that night, was it because he found like the note and
It was because I was trying to run into the garage to kill myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
How were you gonna do it?
I had a knife.
Okay.
So when I
Were you really gonna do it? Looking back on it.
what's interesting, because I have tried to reflect on it, and when I went to the hospital, they ask you a few times. You talk to a social worker, you talk to nurses, and they have a lot of documentation. And I think the reason why they were ultimately decided to 5150 me is because I was like, I was gonna hang myself. I was going to do, like, I would have different answers for everybody. So I wasn't, they call it suicidal ideation, where it's not necessarily, like, yeah, maybe you have a plan, but, like, you aren't necessarily going to do it, but you are, like, thinking about it enough to the point where it's, like, just thinking about it. If you are thinking about killing yourself, like, that's not okay. Like, you need to figure that out. There's nothing romantic or ideal about it. And I mean, even up until that point, I had called the suicide hotline 3 times before finally getting hospitalized. So it had been a process. Like, it had been, like, it wasn't just this one time that I had thought that I was, like, just needed to die. There were several moments leading up to this one. So, I mean, I think while getting hospitalized was totally the worst. Like, I don't recommend it to anybody at all. It's not fun. It's horrible, but it's also where I needed to be. Like, it was a terrible experience that ended up leading me to be on this path that I'm on now, where I am properly medicated, where I am actually going to therapy. I go to support groups. I have been doing a lot of hard work on myself that was so freaking necessary. And I feel like I was very lucky to have the family that I do, because I am. Even if my family is not perfect, my marriage wasn't perfect, I at least had people who cared enough to be like, hold on a second, like, you need to get your shit together.
So why did it work? Why is it working now besides previously?
So I am properly medicated.
Okay.
I don't take any antidepressants. I haven't been on antidepressants since then. So getting all that shit out of my system was great. Antidepressants, I'm sure, work wonderfully for some people, but they just don't. They don't with me. I've tried a couple different brands, and I usually end up kind of suicidal.
Yeah.
So not being on antidepressants has been very helpful. I am on mood stabilizers because I am bipolar. So bipolar 2, like I was saying, it's like I have the hypomania, and then I would have the, like, horrible depression.
Right.
And I haven't had a depressive spell. God, it's been about 6 months. And that's because I have an amazing therapist that I go to weekly. Like I said, I go to support groups it's called Codependency Anonymous, and it's kind of like AA, like there's steps that we have to work through. We have sponsors, and it's helping me to draw boundaries where I need to, and it's teaching me that it's okay to have feelings. It's okay if people are mad. If people are mad at you, that's okay. Like, I struggled with it so much. And I think back to like when I was struggling the most, it was because I felt like people were mad at me all the time. And
Right.
that's just a common thread throughout my life. When my dad was mad at me, when I felt like anybody was mad, when I was failing in my head, like it usually meant that I was letting somebody down or whatever. So now I'm learning that's okay. People are going to be let down with things that I do, and that's all right. And I'm not a perfect person. And I am going to surround myself with people, though, who are also open about failing or also are open about struggling and aren't going to necessarily exploit this idea I have of myself, where I usually put people on pedestals where I'm like, they have it so much more together than me, this person. And it's like, no, we all struggle. We all have our shit. But I definitely had to rethink a lot of things in my life and stop putting up with toxic relationships, not putting up with toxic friendships or whatever.
So your husband gets injured. Jumping forward
Yes.
your husband gets injured, and then you said that kind of spins you down like a.
Yeah, I went right back into my codependent habits where it was all about him now. It wasn't about me. He needed my help. He needed to he needed to rest. He needed to relax. I had caused so much stress and so much drama into my family life that like now I have to take care of other people because I'm fine. I'm fine. I was not fine. I spent months just not in a place where I could heal. And so once I got back into therapy, I had the very first meeting with my therapist, and she was very explicit with me and saying, you need to focus on you right now. You don't need to be worrying about your in-laws. You don't need to be worrying about your family. You don't need to be worrying about your friends or your husband. You need to worry about you. And that kind of, it was almost like it gave me permission. Like, me going to therapy, me taking care of myself isn't me being selfish. It's what I need to do. So my husband actually moved out in May. We're separated right now. And that's helped us both, I think, because the thing with codependence is I naturally will excuse bad behavior, or I will enable certain bad habits and not really stick up for myself, and I will put up with toxic situations even if I know that they're wrong, even if I know, and it's what I saw my mom do.
How do you get past that when you know that something's wrong? If you know someone is, I guess, doing something and you know that it's wrong, how do you, because I can't I can't imagine like just letting something slide like that.
I think it comes from self-doubt and it not trusting yourself at all. I wouldn't trust my judgment. I wasn't trusting that I was of sound mind. Okay. I kept feeling like, well, I'm the crazy one, so I guess I'm just gonna trust what this person says. So once I got to a place where I was trusting myself and I didn't have any qualms with being like, well, this is how I feel, like, it's one of those things where if someone were to like step on your foot,
yes,
and it hurts, and you're like, ow, what the fuck, and they turn around and they're like, it didn't hurt, like, you're like, but yeah, it did, like, what do you but if they're so insistent that it didn't hurt you, like, that's toxic, like, that's not okay, that's not a relationship that is healthy or anything. So I think it's important, like, I think for such a long time I felt accountable to other people, right? Like, I felt like my behavior determined how other people are going to behave. So if other people are like rude to me, or if they're mean to me, well, I must deserve it somehow, right? I must have done something. But now I know, like, no, that is not the case. And that I learned that going to codependency support groups. And the one I go to, it's all women, so it felt safe for me just because I have issues with men.
Is it because of your
everything?
father? Okay.
My dad, everybody. And
okay.
Yeah. I come from a pretty matriarchal family too, where it's a lot of strong women. So I haven't really had a ton of like great male role models in my life for sure.
Did you date like some real like creepos? Yeah.
Like I don't even know if I should say this, but even like I see some of the people I dated now, and I'm like, wow, like they are racist and homophobic, and it's like, and I remember they were like that when I dated them, but it's like, why did I put up with that? My husband, we had issues in different ways. I think he and I were both really young when we jumped into this, and I think we both kind of enabled each other in ways that were not conducive to any kind of healthy functioning relationship. So there's a lot of things now that I'm thinking about that moving forward in any relationship, whether it's, you know, me and my husband get back together because everything's great. I mean, like, whatever is going to happen, I know what I need out of a healthy functioning relationship, and something that's not going to be toxic, something that is not a thing where I'm just going to fall back into the same habits. That's not what I want. And actually in Codependency Anonymous, it's kind of like AA, like I said, but one of the things is like, don't be in a relationship. Like, just do you.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, even like, because I'm trying to get these habits out of my system, if I'm with somebody, then it's like, it's not just me anymore. It's like, well, now I have to do this, or it's like, no, I don't have to do anything, but I need a minute to like learn that. And I need to be able to, I want to be able to look myself in the mirror and be like, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and you know, people can take it or leave it. Because I still have a little bit of that, even though it's not as crippling as it has been my whole life. Like, I still have a little bit of like, well, I don't want to make that person mad, I don't want to hurt that person's feelings, so I'm just not going to say anything. Like, and
really?
Yeah.
I'm saying it. I mean, unless it's something, you know. Yeah, but go ahead. Okay.
But it is, I think, too, women kind of have more of a, I guess, a predisposition to codependency because of gender roles and because of what we see our mothers do or whatever. Like, and I think for me as a mom, codependency comes really naturally because it's like literally in my job description to anticipate somebody's needs.
Okay.
So I have to do that with my children, but I shouldn't have to do that with grown-ass people, right? Like, I shouldn't have to anticipate, like, oh my God, Ryan's water is almost empty. I need to finish up what I'm saying so he can go refill. Like, no, you can take care of yourself.
Right.
Like, but that's the kind of thing, those are the kinds of things that, like, I get into. Like, those are the habits that I fall into where I'm like, I have to take care of other people.
If you felt this way, like not being able to speak up and things like that, how did you even muster up the confidence to say I want a divorce?
Well, I didn't.
Okay.
I would have dealt with it.
Okay.
He was the one that put the brakes on it, and through therapy, I was able to come to terms with it. Through therapy, I was able to come to terms with the fact that the pattern that we were in was not a healthy one. It was extremely toxic, and I needed that. I needed to be out of it for a while. So I think, well, I don't want to say that, like, my therapist gives me permission, because my therapist is very much, like, if I was like, no, I want to fight for this marriage, she would be like, okay, let's help you get to a point where you can be healthy and do that.
Right.
She was very, like, non-judgmental and very much, like, not pushy about, you know, like, she wasn't, like, pushing some sort of her agenda, like, I think this relationship is bad for you, you need to get out of it. It wasn't anything like that. Once I had gotten to the point to be like, I don't think this is good for me, like, that's when it was like, okay, here are the tools you need. Like, here is what you need to do. So even, like, the littlest things, like, I don't have to text back.
Yeah.
If anybody is bugging me, or if they are degrading me, or if they are upset with me, or even if they're just being really, like, pushy and needy and, like, need me to, like, talk them down off a situation. Like, I used to see those situations and be like, well, I have to be a good friend.
Yep.
If I can't, and if I'm busy, I don't need to. So my therapist was instrumental in teaching me that it's okay to say no.
So
and you have to.
Would you ever get back with your husband?
A lot of things would have to change. A lot of
with
things.
You?
With everything.
Both, okay,
I mean,
both
I'm
sides.
changing all the time, but I'm not going to be the one that does all of the work, because that's just going to get me right back into an unhealthy situation. So I definitely don't know what the future holds, but if I can say anything about it, it's like I'm going to take this year to really work on myself and figure out who I am and what I want. And it's okay that I don't have those answers right now. I feel like a year ago, having like something open-ended like that would terrify me and like give me so much anxiety. And now I'm like, it's okay. I can take as much time as I need to figure out, and like really one day at a time. Like I know that's like really cliche, but that's been a big part of how I cope these days, is one day at a time. Every single step. I mean, even like I've only been at this new job for a month. It's like only been a month.
What, okay?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It seems like it seems a lot longer.
Right? I know. It's because like everything's just happening so fast. But I've only been there a month. The month prior to that, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how I was going to be a single mom, if I was going to be able to afford to stay at the place that I'm at now, if I was going to have to move, am I going to have to move back home? Am I going to have to live with my mom? Like, so many questions I had and so much anxiety. Like, so it is kind of funny how things have really just fallen into place. And I grew up pretty religious, but I've lost a lot of that. Like, I don't know that I believe in like the type of religion that I grew up believing. But I can't look at my life right now and think it's all just coincidence.
Right.
Like, I really can't, because I think there has to have been, I have so many people praying for me all the time. Like, my grandmothers are both very devout.
Right.
Like, I'm just like, there has to be some kind of divine intervention, because I can't look at all of this and say that I did it all on my own. I'm not that cocky. Like, I got here because I asked for help. And I think that's really important. I think we have this idea that like you just have to like white knuckle through it. That's what my mom always says, that me and my brother would just white knuckle through it. We'll hold on and hold on and hold on until we can't anymore.
Right.
When it's like, you don't have to do that. You can ask for help. And everybody struggles, so it's okay. One thing that I've learned with like being in therapy is that I'm a perfectionist. And if you were to take a look at my place, and if you were to see the type of grades that I pulled in high school, like, I never felt like a perfectionist, because I've always felt very chaotic. Like, I'm not, like, organization doesn't come naturally to me. I'm very much like that cliche artist where I have a million projects going on at one time. So I've always been like, I'm chaos. Like, I'm not a perfectionist, but no, I'm a fucking perfectionist. I don't like when people see me struggle.
I thought that you were a perfectionist when you were telling me about how you would push through it if you were tired and you didn't want to let anyone down. I was like, oh, she might be a perfectionist.
Yeah. And I didn't know that was also like, I guess when I think of perfectionists, I think of people who get like straight A's and who people like, you know what I mean? Like, but that's not what perfection, like, maybe that is a version
part of it.
Yeah, but like like, I don't want anybody to see me struggle. I just want to be positive all the time. And it's just funny because I'm like, how can that exist with somebody who also has a tendency to get so low that they don't want to be alive anymore? Like, that is, but I guess that's part of it, is like when your identity is so centered on how other people perceive you, and you want other people to see you as, I have it all together, I juggle all these things, I can run a business and work a full-time job and raise kids and do all of this, and I don't struggle. Like, that's how I want to be seen. I want to be seen as this badass that can do everything, but I've had to transform that way of thinking into being like, no, struggling and then moving forward with it. That's what matters, not just having it all together all the time, you know?
So a lot of your fears now, like, I guess staying home by yourself and everything like that. So the way you're smiling.
I'm like, are you going to make fun of me for being afraid of the dark?
No, I wasn't going to bring it up. But since you did, is that why is that? Like, why being afraid of the dark? Why are you scared that someone's going to attack you, or
yes.
Okay?
I'm afraid of, like, okay, I go out now. I have like, because I'm able to, pick and choose what times I go out. I'm not just staying at home anymore. So if I don't have the kids, I'm going to go out with a friend or, whatever. So like, I started getting anxiety about, like, when my husband moved out, I started getting anxiety about, like, I need to stop putting in my address to my, like, Uber and Lyft drivers and just have them drop me off and pick me up, like, down the street and then walk home, because the vast majority of drivers I get are men, and I get scared. I'm like, well, what if they, like, follow me in, or what if they can see that I live alone, or, you know, what if I get home and they see me taking my dog out to, like, go to the bathroom, and they, like, see that I'm there and they, like, sneak in somehow. Like, I just get really paranoid about situations.
Well, that's
like
reasonable.
that.
I think that's reasonable.
But I also, like, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. I'm very much, like, into weird shit like that.
Yeah.
So I just think I'm, like, I don't know. I think in some ways it makes me feel better because I'm, like, I'm prepared. But then I'm, like, I guess it's not crippling anymore. Where when I moved to Ventura, like when I was telling you about, like, after I had my kids, like, I was terrified of tsunamis. I was terrified of the weather. If it was like, if I felt any earthquake out there, it would be so scary. Or, like, we were living in Ventura during the Thomas fire, so, like, that added, like, a whole level of, like, anxiety.
How did you feel with the earthquakes, like, 2 weeks ago, last week?
It's so funny. I was mostly like, whoa, did you feel that was crazy? Like, I was more like, I don't know, entertained by it, if that's the right word.
Was that your first one?
No, I mean, I remember the big one, like, when we were kids. Like, how old were we? Like 5 or something like that?
I wasn't here. This was my first earthquake, like, that last week. That was my first one.
God, how did you feel?
I freaked out. I was ready to move back, man. I was looking for plane tickets. I was like, this is the worst.
What's, like, the natural disaster in Virginia?
We have a lot of hurricanes.
And you're afraid of earthquakes?
Hurricanes are great. They're pretty awesome.
Oh, what?
Yeah, earthquakes is... To me, an earthquake, because it's like someone's moving everything and I can't control it.
It's
like
not someone. Or maybe it is someone.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
It's a magma monster.
You know, these monsters. With a hurricane, if it gets too bad, you can just go inside and you're kind of like you have a barrier.
Okay.
You know, it's something separates you.
There's nowhere to hide, basically.
In an earthquake, like it's happening wherever you are.
Well, that second one freaked me out because it was bigger. The one that we felt, it was the 7.1 in Ridgecrest, because I felt one a couple days before that one, and it was like, whoa, crazy. And
yeah, because there was one like Friday and then another one Saturday.
Yeah. And that one, it scared me in the sense where I was like, I don't know what to do, because, like, when I was in school, we were taught to go under, or, like, go in, like, a door frame, but that there's, like, studies that came out that was like, no, don't do that unless you know that it's, like, a load bearing thing, but, like, there's no guarantee. And then it would be like, and then they were like, okay, go outside if there's an earthquake. But then I guess, like, most of the injuries that happen to people are, like, when they're trying to go outside during an earthquake. Yeah. So I looked it up, and I told my kids, I was like, if there's an earthquake tonight, like, stay in your beds and just cover your head. Like, because that's what they say now is, like, just get to a place where or, like, get under a desk, get under something.
I remember that one, get under the desk, and, like, don't you got to crouch over and put your hands over your head?
Yeah, you just got to protect your head. And then, so, like, I think what gave me anxiety, and don't laugh at me, but the thing that I started getting freaked out about was, like, what if there's a really bad earthquake when I'm at work, and, like, my kids are safe because they're with my husband, they're with their dad, and their dad's always going to keep them safe. But what about my dog? What am I going to do if my puppy is like,
oh my God.
It's a very serious thing.
Your dog is going to be just fine, I'm pretty sure.
We don't know.
They're going to be chilling. They might, like, freak out a little bit, but they'll be like, oh, what was that? Like, oh, what?
I thought about being like, I know our neighbors well. Like, our neighbors are all really, really cool. And I share a garage with one of the neighbors, so we both have the combination. But it's my place that leads into, like, that actually has a door to the garage. And I thought about just going and telling them, like, hey, guys, if there's an earthquake, will you guys just go in my house and, like, go get my dog?
I'm pretty sure they would have done it.
For sure.
What kind of dog do you have? Is it a big dog?
No, she's a little teeny tiny thing. I have no idea what kind of dog she is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you did tell me that. Yeah, she'll be all right.
Like a mutt. But I was nervous about that, but I was able. It wasn't so crippling like with like tsunamis, where I would just, like, not go to the beach ever, and I, like, didn't want to be near the ocean ever.
Well, why would you worry about tsunamis here?
I know.
She's like, yeah, I don't know either, but okay.
That's how. Oh, okay. So I actually.
Have you ever seen The Impossible? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. And that came out around the time where I was really struggling.
Yeah,
so
you
I was
would
like,
freak out if you saw it. Yeah, I don't think you should see it.
Nope. Well, I found out that, so I had this fear of tsunamis. I would have dreams about tidal waves. I would have all these, like, water dreams. I read somewhere that, like, you know, like dream interpretation stuff.
Yes.
I read that if you're dreaming about like water or like waterfalls or like waves or something like that, that it means it's like you're overcome with emotion. Like wait, and I'm like, oh shit, that's totally accurate.
So are you still scared of the beach?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Towards the end of like just living in Ventura, we would go to the beach a lot. I was able to get over it. I used to be so scared of bugs and spiders that, our first place in Ventura had crickets because we had a really big backyard, and I was afraid of crickets.
Okay.
I would like vacuum them up. Like I was.
But why are you scared of crickets? Oh,
right?
Why are
I don't know.
you scared of bugs?
I was like, I think I was freaked out by like the movement, but there were quite a few times where I would like call my husband and be like, "Can you come home and kill this cricket? Can you come home and kill this spider?" I'm not joking, dude.
What would he say?
He did it like twice or 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
He did it.
I probably would have done it maybe the first 2 times.
But then it was like, get your shit together, like for real.
You better get you some bug spray, mama.
Yeah,
Kill
like
that shit.
it was like, it got to that point where it was just a little too extreme. But now I can totally, like sometimes I don't even kill the spiders. I just let them live because I'm like, whatever, you're gonna get rid of the other
I
bugs.
do that. Yeah, I just let spiders chill, man.
But they don't freak me out so bad anymore to that extreme where it was so like that was like what my friends knew me as. Like they would tease me about it all the time because I'd be like posting on Facebook, does anybody want to kill this spider for me? Like it was really, really bad. I also think that wedding photography, like once I started working my own business and like actually getting out of the house and like having to work, that put me out there in a way that I had never been. So it was like, it was empowering because I was like doing something that I was good at, and I was getting out of the house. I could do something other than just sit at home watching The Wiggles or Yo Gabba Gabba or whatever. Still remember all those songs. But I think that helped a lot. I think if you're just stuck at home all the time, like, yeah, of course you're gonna have anxiety or you're gonna be like reclusive.
You're like just stuck with your thoughts, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So even if I am totally scared of it. I don't sleep in the pitch dark. Like I leave my hall light on, and I used to say it was for the kids, but now I only have my kids half the time. So it's like,
even still, you still do it?
I have my hall light on every night, and I sleep with my laptop. I like go to sleep with like noise, with like watching TV shows.
But why do you do that?
I just can't. I cannot handle the dark or like. I remember when I took a film class in photography. It was like shooting black and white film.
Yep.
I took a class one class before I started my photography business, and I remember the one roll of film that I had to develop in the actual, not the dark, they call it the dark room, but there's like their little red lamp in there, but it's like the room where you have to like spool the film and like roll it up
with the liquid and everything.
Yeah, like it's pitch black when you put it and you're in like a room that's like standing room only, like you can't sit in there.
It's called the
I don't remember what it.
I know people call it the dark room, but it's called I can't remember. Go ahead.
But like, so I was like in there, spooling it up, and I had to stop because I had a panic attack. And it freaked me out so bad I couldn't be in there. And like my professor was so nice, and he was kind of like nerdy, and he was like, our brains are just data processors. That's all. Our brains are data processors. So when you don't have anything to process, when it's just pitch black, and like I was using one of my senses by like, touching something. I was like doing the film thing, but like I couldn't, like my brain was just trying to find something to fixate on. And when that happens, I'm usually fixating on, oh my God, what about this? What about that? I was even, how we were talking about Hereditary and Midsummer at work. I watched the trailer the other day, and then like the next night, I was like, oh my God, that part was really scary. Oh my God, what's gonna happen there? Like I started freaking myself out about it at home, and I haven't even seen the freaking movie yet. Like I haven't seen it. It was just the trailer.
But don't you know when? This is my thought process, right? And this is why I like movies and things don't scare me, because I know that it's not real. So then I'll say, well, like, Ryan, why are you scared of this? If
you're able to like reason with your brain, like you're. Like,
that's what I'll do. If I get scared, I'll break it down. Like, why am I scared of this?
And I think I'm able to do that now in a way that I wasn't able to before, but. I mean, I'm also like properly medicated now, and I think, and I take a lot of medication. I take mood stabilizers, and I haven't had a like big depressive spell in a while. I haven't been like hypomanic in a while where I feel like I can't, like I'm not sleeping because I'm literally on medication that it like sedates me.
Yeah.
So that is really, really helpful. So I don't necessarily, I'm not like staying up all night reading horrible things that are happening in the world, like because I'm able to like sleep. I think that's the biggest thing.
But why would you watch all these murder shows and things like that? Why would you
right?
like feed that?
You know what? I mean? And I think sometimes in like some situations it's made me feel like, I think it's validating because I'm like, okay, I'm not just scared of nothing. Like I'm not just like, these things happen.
Yeah.
Like really, really horrible things happen. There's really evil, terrible people in this world. And also like these people get caught. I think that helps too, is where it's like they get caught and there are people out there whose job it is to like find these bad guys, or like when it's something like a crazy survival story where it's like this woman, there's so many amazing survival stories, but like this woman survived this terrible serial killer and she like literally kept herself alive in time for her to like find help. Like things like that I find really inspirational and empowering. So I think it's like a little bit of everything. Like I'm validated because I know that I'm not just scared of like nonsense. I also feel a little bit more prepared because I know like if like somebody ever is like get in the car, I know that I'm never supposed to go to a second location with them. Like I have to like fight, you know, like just little things like that where I don't know, it just helps me feel like mentally prepared. So I think it's like I'm willing to deal with the little bit of anxiety that it gives me. But what makes you anxious?
Nothing.
Liar.
Nothing at all.
Earthquakes?
Not really. Like if an earthquake happened right now, I would be fine because I've been through it. You're so silly. Because I've been through it, so I would be okay. I wouldn't like it, but I would be okay. But nothing really.
See, and that's like, I think that's the interesting thing to me is like some people, like people's brains just work so differently. Like
for me, I just overthink everything. So if I feel some type of way, I have to figure out why I feel that way. Even if it takes me like 2 hours, I would just keep asking myself until it just goes away.
You sound like a Pisces.
Here you go with that. That stuff is not real. But so yeah, nothing really makes me anxious really. I get impatient. I don't know if that counts.
Did you have anything like that? Like were you like always like that? Were you always like a brave kid? Like did you get anxiety a lot when you were a kid?
I don't think so. I would get scared of things. But I was scared because I was so small. I felt so small. And I was fat when I was little. So I was small.
Really?
Yeah, I was really fat. I was small and I was short and I was slow. So I felt like I was an easy target.
Were you like picked on a lot?
Yeah, I was. So that's now why like I'm always at the gym. Why I always go to the gym. What else? Why I don't talk about people. Ever. I never talk about people. Because I know what that feels like, you know?
I like that.
Yeah.
That's actually like, it's kind of like a thing with Geminis where like we gossip or like, and it's something that I think in just when I've chosen my friends or the people that I've like hung out with, like that's one of the things that I notice a lot of is it's like always talking about other people, and I can't necessarily sit here and be like, oh, I hate talking. It's like, no, I am totally guilty of gossiping about people or talking about people behind their backs, but I also know what it's like now, especially because
to be talked about.
Yeah, so many people knew about my hospitalization, even people that I didn't want to know. It just ended up coming out there because people gossiped about it, people talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
So now being in that position and feeling how hurtful that was, that's like something that I'm really trying to work on, is to like see the good in people and only put good out there, because I know that if somebody is talking to me about somebody else, chances are they're doing that to me too, where they're telling other people all my shit. They're telling and like I know, especially now, like the people that I like to surround myself with, it's like we're talking about ideas. We're talking about, oh, this person is doing this and look at how awesome that is. Or just like empowering people. And I feel too that like, I don't know if you know anything about cool girl culture. So it kind of, I'm like referencing.
It's like a movie or
no? Well, I'm referencing Gone Girl. Did you ever read the book or see the movie?
I saw the movie.
So she kind of talks about it in the movie. I think the idea is more fleshed out in the book, but it's like this idea of like the cool girl, like, oh yeah, I only hang out with men. I don't like other girls because other girls are drama. And like, oh, I love beer and I can, like things like that where it's like we want to be one of the guys.
Yeah.
I can relate to that so much because I feel like all through school, like high school, I was always really like, I don't like women because women are drama and they're mean. And I was bullied by a lot of women or girls, I guess, in like elementary school and in middle school. So like when I hit high school, I was like, I hate girls. Girls are stupid. They are dumb, and I'm better than them. Like I'm cooler than them, and that's why I hang out with dudes because I play an instrument and I'm in bands and I do that. Like, and now when I look at it, like I don't want to be one of the guys. Now I'm like, I want to surround myself with amazing, badass, strong women that will lift me up and that I can lift up. And I think I don't know if it like necessarily comes naturally to women. I have no idea, but I know like just in my own experience, like I'm recovering from wanting to tear down other women.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes. All I want to do now is be around women who will support me, who I can support, like, and just want to do good things in the world, want to put good out there, and aren't necessarily, like, I still have, like, people in my life who are like, girls suck, girls are dumb, or, oh my gosh, girls only care about this, and it's like, no, that you're just not seeing what they really are, or you're jealous, or whatever. I think it says more about the person saying it than it does about the person that they're talking about, you know what I mean? So, like, that's been a big part of like my healing, I think, is finding the women. Like my best friend is like, she and I are so supportive of each other, but it wasn't always like that. We when we met in high school, we both were terrible to each other and would talk bad about each other behind our backs, and like it.
How did that change?
Distance, for sure. We talked, like we never just like cut each other out completely. But we had a really, like, I want to say like 6 years where we weren't hanging out. We didn't see each other that often. We weren't really texting. Now, like, she and I talk almost every day, and I learned so much from her. She works at a restaurant, and she's had to go through a lot to get to the point where she's at now, where she speaks up for herself. She speaks up for other people. She, like, puts herself out there in a place of, like, it's okay that I'm new and that I just started this job because I'm going to make changes and I want to make this a better place for people to work at. So like I am inspired by that because it's like I still have a little bit of that fear of like, well, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Well, I don't want to do this. Well, or like even just working at Archive, like I'm new here, so I'm not going to say anything. It's like, no, if you have something to say it. Or if, like be brave, put yourself out there, and like people will recognize that,
right.
And that's really so like even just having women in my life who are total badasses, like that's empowering for me because I learned from that. I take that in and I'm like, that's what I want to be. And it's taken me a long time to get to that point, but hey, everybody works at different places.
Do you have maybe something against men only because of like your past and what you just told me previously? Do you feel like there might be like a little something?
Probably. Like I might have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, even like with movies that I watch. Like sometimes I'm like, I want to watch something that is like directed or written by a woman. And I think sometimes it's not so much that it's like I hate men. It's more like I love seeing different perspective or like a fresh perspective on a situation that maybe was previously only written or seen through the eyes of men. So like I know we were talking about Quentin Tarantino. It's not that I think that like we were talking about Quentin Tarantino at work, and like it's not that I think he's bad or that he's terrible, or like it's more like I'm just ready for something else. Like I want to see a woman out there that's doing action movies, or you know what I mean? Like I think it would be cool just to see something else, a fresh perspective on stories that have been told forever,
right.
So maybe I have a little bit of chip on my shoulder, but I also I'm not like, I don't go into any sort of situation thinking that I know a person.
Right.
I don't ever look at somebody and I'm like, okay, you're obviously a dude that goes to the gym, you're probably an asshole. Like I've never thought that about you. Like I only ever see what you thought that. Oh, I went to the gym all the time.
She goes to the gym, man. She's a jerk. Look at her face. I hate it.
But I've never, like, I try really hard not to go in with any judgments or preconceived ideas about any person.
Yep.
I usually, and like one of the things, and Jackie and I were talking about it too, how I'm like, I think I'm so talkative and sometimes I have no boundaries and I say things that like, maybe I should have a little bit more boundaries, and that's like kind of what I'm working on. And so I was like,
what?
Like, I don't need to tell every single person I meet my life story. I don't need to make every single person I meet my new best friend. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of how I would approach also. I would be telling people at like airports my life story and shit. Like, and not that it would like not come up organically, but it would be like I was just such an open book. I want to tell everybody my story.
Why do you think you would do that?
Loneliness, I think.
Okay.
Like, I think it was just wanting connection, wanting some kind of human connection, and thinking that if I am vulnerable and I put myself out there, then like somebody else would too.
Would open up to you.
Yeah, and like that happens sometimes, but what would happen more often than not is people would take advantage of that, or they would start to see me as weak, and maybe not saying so much like, oh, I think you're just weak, but like saying little things that would end up making me feel, I would leave and feel like, man, I'm just like such a mess. I'm such a mess. When it's like, no, everybody's a mess. I'm fine. I'm doing what I need to do. I am taking care of myself, and I'm not perfect, but nobody is.
Right.
So I think like that's important too, is like kind of like I was saying before, just like surrounding myself with people who know me, and that's okay if it's a smaller number than it was last year or 2 years ago or whatever.
I like having only just a very small circle. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I'm learning to, for sure.
too many people, it kind of like the waters get a little muddy when there's too many people going on.
Yeah, definitely. But that's not like, I used to want, I would hear other people talk about like, oh yeah, that person has a lot of friends, and I would like want to be that. I would be like, I want to be that person that everybody talks about and is like, oh yeah, they have so many friends. Oh yeah, like their birthday party was crazy because they invited like everybody they knew. Like, I wanted that.
Yeah.
I craved like just being around a lot of people.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I don't need to. Like, that's okay. And not everybody is gonna like me, and that's okay, but it's still a struggle. Like, sometimes I'll leave work and be like, oh man, did I say something really stupid? Like, but it's,
really?
Yeah, like it's just little, but that's just like how I run anxious. I run nervous. I am doubting myself, but it's a process. It's at least better than it was last year, and hopefully by this time next year, it'll be even better. You know?
Do you ever look back and just think, man, I've come a long way? Because now, with the story you just told me, I would have never guessed that would have happened. What, like 8 months ago, something like that, whatever?
It hasn't even been a year.
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, and you know, I've had other people say that as well. Like, I haven't shared it with a lot of people. I mean, I know it's on a podcast, but like, as far as being really like explicit with the details, like it's taken me a long time to feel okay with it and not feel ashamed of like what happened, because I think that was the biggest thing that was holding me back, is just feeling ashamed. And it's not necessarily like I need to like go tell the world, oh yeah, like here's my story and but it's like, I'm sharing this with you, and it's obviously, I mean, I know it's like not sharing it with like 3,000 people, but it's like, that's okay with me, because I know I can hope that like maybe that'll resonate with somebody too, where it's like, it's okay to struggle and you will get better. Like if you put the work in, you can get better, and it doesn't have to depend on anybody else. It doesn't have to be like, well, you know, my husband, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, whatever. It doesn't have to be based on somebody else. I have to be better for my kids. Yeah, I have to be better for my kids, but I also have to be better for me.
Right.
And I'm no good to, I don't want my kids to grow up and think I need to go home and take care of my mom.
Right.
I don't want my kids to ever think like, well, I have to call my mom because I have to, like, she'll get really lonely, or, oh, my mom's my best friend, and if I leave, I want them, when they're ready to leave the house, I want them to feel so prepared and feel so ready, and to not worry, and to only have their future to worry about, you know? And in order to get to that point, I have to take care of me, and I have to let them know that even if I don't have it figured out as far as they're concerned, I have it all. their future's solid. Everything's gonna be okay.
When you talked about being lonely, that's why you would open up. Do you see yourself dating in the
Future.
I guess future?
I think it's hard to think about because I have kids.
Yep.
Because it's not just like, well, I'm getting divorced. It's like there's kids involved. So it's like, if I ever were to like make a decision on what I'm doing with my marriage or whatever, like, or you know, am I gonna like go down a different path and like date somebody new? There's just a lot to that. And I definitely don't like, if like, I guess right now I don't see myself ever getting married again. I don't see myself, you know, ever really wanting to have that kind of connection. But I think that's also because I still have a lot of work to do on me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of things to figure out within myself of like, what do I actually want in a partner? What do I need from somebody else? And how can I make those needs and wants align with somebody else and still have like a not codependent relationship? Because I think that's the biggest thing is I need to break this codependency. And I've read books, I'm doing work on it, but I think I don't feel like I can be in a relationship anytime soon without going back into old habits.
Gotcha.
Without going back into like, okay, I'm doing the same thing where this is a toxic situation and nobody is better for this relationship. Everybody is just in this cycle of hurt and enabling and just bad shit. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. And I definitely don't want to be like that mom that's like always bringing home new dudes. So like, you know what I mean? Like I don't want my kids meeting anybody until like, unless I know that it's like serious or whatever. So yeah.
Very well put. I thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it was fun. I feel like I talked so much.
Well, I was hoping you would, because you
right.
have you're very intelligent.
Thanks.
Very intelligent. Yeah.
I've taken one college class, but hopefully that's changing in the fall.
But you have a lot of life experience.
Yeah.
So I'll take that over college courses any day. What are you doing for the rest of the day?
I don't know. I have a bunch of editing to do because I have a wedding tomorrow and I still need to edit photos from my last wedding, but I'm almost done, so I might be able to deliver that today. But
No Hereditary?
I knew you were gonna ask. No, I don't know. Let's see what time it's doing.
Okay. But thank you.
Yes, this was awesome. You asked very good questions.